This is the last week of the series, and just to make sure we really know what the name of this series is about on the last week of it, I want everyone, we're going to bring up the slide here in just a second. I want everyone to repeat this, what the name of the series is. We don't do this ever, so we're going to do it this morning. All right, so what's the name of the series? My Big Fat, say it again. All right, just wanted to make sure you knew what the series is about. It's not about your husband's big fat mouth, and it's not about your wife's big mouth. Notice I left a word out. It's not about your sister-in-law or your brother-in-law or your kids or your boss's big fat mouth. It's about my big fat mouth. And all of you are going, that's right, it's about James's big fat mouth. No, it's about your big fat mouth and my big fat mouth. It's about taking personal responsibility for that. So let's go to it again. Let's say it with passion now, all right? My Amen. All right, that's good. Now, just who among us this morning, let me see by hands, have ever gotten in trouble because of your big fat mouth? Yeah. That's now this is just for guys, okay? How many of you guys have ever said to a woman, ask her a question, ask, when are you due? And she wasn't. Anybody ever have that happen to you? All right. Now, I looked it up, statistical averages, all right? Statistical average is that the average guy does this on the average only once in his lifetime. I'm above average. I have said it more than one time in my life. And man, aren't there just some times in your life where you say things, things come out of your mouth and you're going, no, you're trying to get it back. And every one of us, though, have this little button that we have in our life that we can push. It's called the pause button, right? We come equipped with this thing called the pause button. Now, sometimes it's hard to find it. I don't know about you, but I can't find that pause button sometimes. There's just so many different times. Several years ago, we kind of doubled our property. We bought what used to be the old Safeway store / Hobby Lobby. We remodeled it. And that first fall that we were into that, we were going to have this big Thanksgiving dinner, the whole church, and first time in years that all the church could get together, be in one place and one time. We're going to have this great Thanksgiving dinner to give praise and thankfulness to God that we were able to get this property, and we were able to remodel it and using it and all this stuff. So at the end of the service, because we didn't have enough chairs and tables over at the Family Life Center is what we called it, to be able to have that at one time. So I said, we need your help. This is an announcement I made at the end of the service. We need your help this morning. I need some strong men and some hefty women to be able to help us get the tables. Guess how many women volunteered? 0, none. And so I wished I had pushed the pause button, but more than the pause button, here's the button I wished I had. Rewind. Okay? How many of you have ever wanted a rewind button? A rewind button, a rewind button. Well, you can push that sucker and it'll just erase everything that you just said, and you could start all over again. Unfortunately, that is not standard equipment on the human body, all right? And it's not available for an upgrade either. We were born with what we were born with, and we do have the pause button, but we do not use it very well within our life. And so the whole basis of this series that we're doing, it comes from Jesus' half-brother, a guy by the name of James, who grew up, and he didn't really believe that Jesus was the Son of God in his growing up time. How horrible would that be to have God be your older brother, half-brother? It'd be tough, right? He would never do anything wrong, correct? Now, I had a sister like that. She never did anything wrong. And so I always wanted to tell about the things that I knew she did wrong, just kind of a little brother's prerogative to do that, make sure everybody understood. She's not the perfect person. Oh, Jane, she is so nice. She is so good. No, I know her better than this. And so James is Jesus' half-brother, and he actually did not come to believe that Jesus was the Son of God until after the resurrection. I mean, he saw him crucified on the cross, and then he saw him alive, and he goes, whoa, dude, resurrection kind of solved it for him at that point, and he became one of the early church's great spokesperson for the resurrection of Jesus and about who Jesus was. Now, what's interesting is he wrote one letter. He was known as James the Just because he lived an amazing life, and people didn't like that he lived such a good life. They actually, there's a group of people who did not like the fact that he was proclaiming so strongly that Jesus was resurrected from the dead, so they killed him. They took him to the top of the temple and threw him down 300 feet, and he hit some stones, and of course he died there. But that's when he became a follower of Jesus. And he wrote some words. He wrote probably one of the most practical books in all the New Testament. You could call it gym class. James, Jim. Yeah. Oh, well, never mind. Can I rewind that one and see if we can start over? So it's a very practical book, but in it, we've been reading it each week. And this morning, what we're going to do is take James chapter 1, verse 19 through 21, and we're just going to walk through it because there's such practical things that need to be cemented into our life. But I want us to really remember this by doing some hand motions, all right? James chapter 1, verse 19, James says, everyone must be what? Quick to listen, what? Slow to speak and slow to anger. And you could probably put quick to listen in between each of those. And so we're going to do some hand motions, all right? So every time this morning when we talk about being quick to listen, I want you to go, quick to listen, all right? Do it with me. Quick to listen. You open up your hands. Quick to listen and slow to speak, all right? Quick to listen and slow to speak. One more time. Quick to listen and slow to speak. Say it with me. And slow to anger. All right, so you got that down. Quick to listen, slow to speak, quick to listen, slow to anger. Now, the reason I'm using the hand motions is because, and you've discovered this in your own life, you may not have been aware of it, but when you are in conflict with someone, you get in a conversation, or, none of the married couples here ever get in an argument. But when you get into one of those situations, if you can be learned to be quick to listen and slow to speak, quick to listen and slow to anger, things go a whole lot better because, and you may have noticed this, when somebody is saying something and you hear them and you just want to correct them because after all, they've got the whole wrong idea of what your motive was or anything else, and you lose that quick to listen part, and we become quick to speak. And what happens, we in our fists begin to go into little balls of fists, maybe to duke it out or something of that nature, but it's just a natural reaction. You begin to clench your fists. And that's kind of a signal that what's happening in your life is that your ears are getting closed like your fists, your mind is getting closed like your fist, and your heart's closing off towards that other person. And so this is just a little memory device to help you to remember that when conflict comes around, whenever you're getting those discussions, we want to be or louder. Okay, slow to speak. Okay, this is what James wants us to understand more than anything else, because here's what happens. You and I get into this conflict. We get into a discussion about things. And what I want more than anything else from you is I want you to understand what I'm thinking. I want you to understand me. And at the same time that I'm wanting you to understand me, guess what you're wanting? Your desire also is for me to what? Understand you. More than anything else, what's going on in those things is that you want to be understood and I want to be understood. And so both of us have the same goal, actually, and that is that each of us want to be understood. And so the only way to do that is for one and then both of you, it's best that way, but one of you at least will lead out by being quick to listen and slow to speak, all right? So that's our goal this morning, is to learn to be and slow to speak, all right? So here's what happens. James, he does this in such a remarkable way. In verse 19, he starts off this way. He says, let's go to that next slide. already been there, all right? Understand this, my dear brothers and sisters. Now, that's interesting. And I'll tell you why it's so interesting. In the first century, and ladies, I want you to be quick to listen on this, all right? In the first century, women did not count for much, all right? They had a very low position on the social scale, all right? And so you listened through your husband, and you supposedly learned through your husband. That didn't go too well, but that was kind of the whole idea of the social scale. But James does something, and James is a Jewish guy. He is steeped in Judaism, which, in the Jewish household, the woman did not talk outside the household. But he says, understand this, and he includes both male and female. He's saying this is an equal opportunity thing. All of us need to understand something that I'm getting ready to say to you. And so he widens the breadth and depth, and he says this word from God is both to male and female, and it's important. You need to understand this. And then he goes on to say this. He says, everyone must be quick to listen. So who must be quick to listen? Okay, that means everybody in this room, male, female, both of us, we need to be quick to listen, all right? This is something that God wants from us more than anything, and there's a reason for this. He says, this is the main priority. He says, your first priority, the number one thing in the sequence of things going on, the most important thing relationally that you can do is to be quick to listen. That's the most important thing. So he says, before anything else, quickly listen, which is, to be honest, one of the hardest things to do, isn't it? I mean, it is really weird. And it's kind of funny that he says, quick to listen. I mean, how can you speed up your listening process? You can talk faster, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can listen any faster. But he's saying this is the first priority. This is something that's extremely important for you to understand. Everyone, male and female alike, you need to be quick to listen, all right? So that's the very first thing and priority. And essentially what James is saying is this is just more the thing that Jesus taught all of us to do. There's a verse in the Bible that talks about, we call it the golden rule, which says to do unto others before they do unto you. Is that what it says? No. It says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, all right? That's the old King James Version, but you get the idea. So the whole idea of what James is saying here is, here's something that you are to do just as you want somebody else to do to you, because everyone has this desire to be understood. We want people to know, we want to feel like we've been heard by someone else. And so what James is saying is, this is the same thing my brother Jesus taught, all right? You be quick to listen. And then he makes this statement. He says this, go on with the next slide. He says, everyone must be slow to what? Speak. We get that in reverse, don't we? We're pretty fast about the speaking thing. Maybe a great way to understand this is what James is saying is, wait and be late with your speech, all right? Wait and be late for your speech. And I would add something on it. When you're waiting, whenever you are quick to listen and you're slow to speak, what you're wanting to do is, if you say something, ask questions. Be curious. If you have to say anything, be curious. Ask questions when something's going on. You say, well, golly, James, I'm talking about the writer of the book, not me, all right? I mean, you don't understand. I've got a husband, I've got a wife, I've got a son or daughter. Whenever they're talking about something, they just go on and on and on and on. Anybody been there? They just keep talking and talking. Them a question, you know what that's going to do? They're going to go on and on and on and on and on and on. They're never going to stop. But James is saying it is your responsibility to ask questions. It's your responsibility to be quick to listen. You know what happens when you ask questions? You learn a little bit more about what's going on in that person's mind. Now, if you're a parent like I am, who has been through different seasons of parenting, I'm telling you, the one thing that I wished I had modeled for my kids or could have convinced them to do was be to ask questions. First service, we had all the kids that had been to CIY. They came back on such a high, a spiritual high. let's make sure you understand that. Came back on a spiritual high from CIY. And I said, I'm going to share something with you because that you can grab a hold of. If you'll wait a couple of days, your parents will forget I ever said this, and you can make some mileage on it. But if you want to freak your parents out, whenever your dad or your mom is going on one of those tirades when the finger starts shaking, you ever had one of those times when the finger starts shaking, I'm going to tell you this, you need to listen up, I'm wiser, I've got all the experience, listen to me. Just say to them, Dad, I don't quite agree, I don't quite understand. Could you back up and say that another way so I can understand it? You know what happens? You know what your dad will do? Because that's never happened a day in his life before, all right? He's never had that said to him. And he will just say, we'll talk about it later, because he'll just be so dumbfounded he can't go on anyplace else. Now, and the reason is nobody does that. And I can tell you that my worst parenting moments were moments where I powered up and I said, okay, I've got the wisdom, I've got the experience, I've got the age on you. Your frontal lobe's not even developed yet. You're going to listen to what I have to say. And I begin shaking the finger, And you know what happens to that thing? The eyes roll back in the back of their head, right? You've seen that happen. And they just turn off. They don't hear anything you say. And so instead of doing that, if parents, you and I would say, we're going to be quick to listen and find out where they're coming from, they may be able to do the same thing also, And we, after that happens, after we give the shake finger, why doesn't my kid want to hang out with me? I mean, why don't my kids even talk to me anymore, It's because we're driving them away. Now, parents, you need to know this. Husbands, you need to know this. Wives, you need to know this. You can write a person that you love right out the door. You can be right in what you're shaking your finger about, but you can write that person right out the door by your finger shaking thing. And it's true if you're a boss. You can write your all-star rock star employee right out of the company. You can be right, and you can write a person right out of the relationship. Because, our deal is, I want to be understood. And so you're going to have to listen to my tirade so that I can be understood. And the person that's getting the tirade, we are saying, I don't want to be lectured. And I'm willing to be open to what your ideas are if I can get some sort of semblance that you are listening to me, that you're trying to understand where I am. And we know this is important. We've been on both sides, isn't that right? We've been on the side where somebody's shaking the finger at us, and we've been doing the eye rolling, and we've been on the other side also. And you can even see the kids' eyes glaze over, and you walk away from the conversation, you're going, I don't understand. I don't see why they get it. I know I'm right. I know that I'm giving them good advice. I know that I'm giving them wise counsel. Why is it that I just can't communicate? And James would say to you, because you're not quick to listen. You're quick to speak. And if you want to enhance that relationship, say it nice and loud. Yeah, be quick to listen. Quick to listen, slow to speak. Now, if you can get that idea down, what he says next, that we are to be quick to listen and slow to speak, what he says next comes easier. And this is what he says next. Everybody needs to be what? Slow to anger. So instead of being fast to anger, we need to be quick to what? Listen, right? And then be slow to anger. And so that's a very, very important concept for us to get across. And now, slow to become angry is both a result and it's a decision that we make. If you're quick to listen and slow to speak, you are less likely to be angry because it's easier to guard against your anger if you've decided up front, I'm going to ask some questions. I'm going to be curious. I'm going to try to understand what's going on in their life in that. Now, we all express anger differently, right? I mean, some of you, you get angry and boom, you explode and it's like a skunk, all right? You guys are skunks and you just kind of spray. You turn your back to people and it gets messy and smelly pretty quick, right? Know anybody in this room that's a skunk? Don't point to them. All right, so we that's one side of the deal. We vent that way. We get mad and we blow up and we explode and we walk away going, boy, I feel so much better. I've been able to vent, and the whole room is slain. I mean, they're just spread out dead, The smell in the room is so bad they can't stand. I don't understand what's wrong with them. All I did was vent a little, but actually we just exploded all over everybody. The second way we respond is to be a turtle. We just crawl back in our shell. We get mad, and we crawl back in our shell, and we sulk, and we get moody, and we just, what's going on? And we do this in order to say one word. When your wife or your husband says, honey, what's wrong? We get in our shell for one reason. We want to say the word, nothing. What's wrong, honey? Nothing. And then we get back in our shell some more. So we're either a skunk or a turtle. Either one of those things are not good for relationships. Can I get an amen on that? Neither one of them are a good thing. And so we go one way or the other. We blow up or we go inside. But the point James is saying is either one of those options is bad for your relationship. And one of the best ways to bypass blowing up or just becoming passive aggressive or, sulky and moody and trying to get control in that way is for you to get understanding of where the other person is coming from. So in order to do that, we are quick to listen and we are slow to speak. We are quick to listen and we are slow to anger. But anger, let me say this, anger in the context of what James is talking about here is really more like anger like it's drawing hasty and misinformed, relationally destructive conclusions on the whole situation. Hasty, misinformed, and relationally destructive conclusions. So here's this antidote. What James says is the longer you listen, the more you learn, and the less angry you'll be. So say that with me. The longer you listen, say it, the longer you'll listen, the more I'll learn, and the less angry I'll become. It's so obvious. I mean, but when something is obvious like that, we forget about it when we're in the heat of the moment. And sometimes we need to be reminded. And that's sometimes what makes perfect sense to us doesn't always make perfect sense to somebody else. But let me say this, all right? Let's bring the next slide up if you could. Everything everybody does, everything everybody says, everything everybody believes makes perfect sense to them. You believe that? Have you ever been angry and you thought you said your case so well and it made perfect sense to everybody around you, or you thought it did, and the people around you are going, I don't get what they're even talking about. Let's move it out of the family situation into the political realm on Facebook. And somebody will post something on Facebook and we will say, I don't know how in the world they could think that way. Like I say, everything everybody does, everybody says, everybody believes makes perfect sense to them. It may not be right. It may not make sense, but it makes sense to them. And so in order to be able to get through that stage of us saying, I don't get how they could believe that. I don't get how they could possibly understand that. I don't know what I would say to that situation. Who is it that needs to be educated? Me, who says that. When I say I don't understand, I need the education. I can get that education by being quick to listen and slow to speak. Now, actually, this is just for myself. Maybe you can relate. Many times I don't want to understand how they could think that way because I'd rather just be critical. It's a whole lot more fun, right? And it's a whole lot more fun to just get with the guys that you who think just like you do, and I can be snarky about everybody else, and we can laugh about it. But the reality is, if I don't want to be understand, then probably if it's someone close to you, it's not going to go well in the relationship. And if we get an education about why they're doing or thinking or saying the things, it might make some sense. Well, we can't have that, can we? We can't possibly have something that they say makes sense. I'll just be ignorant and hang around with the people I like, and I can be snarky to everybody and critical. How about that? Isn't that a good idea? You're not responding well to that, are you? Because that's probably what you'd like. So newsflash, everything everybody does makes sense to them. So here's something if there's something you don't know, and if you're saying, I can't believe my son would do that or my daughter, if you become quick to listen and slow to speak, be curious and ask questions, you might get a clue to where dialogue can begin. Now, I don't know how many of you ever read Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Anybody? Great book. It's an older book, worth getting out of the mothballs or going and purchase if you've never purchased it. He gives 7 different habits. The 5th habit is seek first to understand, then be understood. Seek first to understand and then be understood. I don't know whether Stephen Covey read James, but basically that's what James is saying here in James chapter 1. Seek first to understand, then be understood. So when we're in conversation, when we're in conflict, when we're just listening to reply rather than to understand, we don't learn anything at all. We've got our minds closed off. And so we've got to, say it with me, quick to listen. We've got to be quick to listen. Now, if we stop right there, I mean, if we say sermon's over right there, it would be a good day, right? You got something practical to go home with. It's been entertaining somewhat, maybe not, and it's it's good practical stuff, and we can go home. But actually, James is not through with us yet. He's been very, very practical, and while it's practical, there's something more going on. There's something more than just self-help that James is talking about here. There is a divine agenda attached to this. And so he says in the next verse, he says this, because the reason that you need to be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, here's why. Because the anger of man does not what? Produce the righteousness of God. You see, there's some agendas going on. Okay, I want you to think with me. There's some different agendas that are going on. Now, it's true, if I'm quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, generally I'm calmer, it makes the other person calmer, and generally we can get some dialogue going about that situation. But here's the issue. That's not all there is. There's a bigger issue. Because when I'm in relationship with you and I get into conflict with you about something, there's at least 3 agendas going on. There's my agenda, and my agenda says, I know that I'm right, correct? Everybody agree I'm always right? No, but I want you to understand that I'm right, and when you acknowledge that I'm right, then my agenda is complete, okay? That doesn't happen very often. Then there's the other person's agenda, and their agenda is the same thing as yours. I know I'm right. So we got some clashing going on, right? And whenever you acknowledge that I'm right, everything's going to be fine with the world. It doesn't ever get that way. But then there's a third agenda, right? The third agenda is God's agenda. And God says, and I know that some of you think that God's on my side because he knows I'm right, correct? The reality is God's not on either side. He wants you to be on his side, right? And that's the only side that counts. It's not whether or not you are right or the other person is right, but God is always right. And so that is his agenda. We want to be right at each other. I want to be right in your eyes. And if I can convince you, if I can power up and control you, if I can work my speech to persuade you so that you understand I'm right, then we think the world's fine. But the other person's thinking the same thing. And God says, it doesn't matter whether you're right at each other. I want you to be right with each other. So that means we've got to be, and we need to be and slow to anger, all right? Because he says that anger does not produce the righteousness of God. So here's the situation that goes on, is that I think I'm right, and so if I think I'm right, that's my righteousness, right? That's called self-righteousness. Do you know the Bible says anything about self-righteousness? He says that the Bible says over and over again that that's like filthy rags, all right? It's just like stinky stuff going on in your life. And so James gives some positive things that needs to happen. Let's go to the next slide. He says that, therefore, he says, because of all this, I want you to get rid of all moral filth. Okay, now here's where it gets interesting. The word get rid of, it's like taking off a coat. It's whenever you have a dirty coat on. God says, I want you to take that off. You know what that dirty coat is? What he calls moral filth there? That's your own self-righteousness. And so when I'm going around saying, I'm right, I'm going to put my I am right sport jacket on, and I'm going to convince you, I'm going to pound it into your head to make sure you know that I'm right. And James says that doesn't get you anywhere. What you need to do is pull off, get rid of, take off that self-righteousness jacket and throw it to the side. Okay, if I throw it to the side, what am I going to do? Well, he goes on to say this. He says, and the evil, the word evil there can be translated evil, it can also be translated malice. You know what malice is? Where you speak bad about somebody else, where you put them down, where you figure out ways to get back at them, get back angrily at them. Now, just hold on with me for just a second. How much time do you and I waste throughout our day that whenever we're in conflict with somebody else and we try to figure out every way possible to make sure how we can convince the other person we're right. And we go through all these scenarios in our mind. I'm not going to have you raise your hands because I know all of us do it. But do you realize how much time we waste during the day putting up these scenarios that will never, ever take place? I have thought of some great put downs to say to other people. I just never get the chance to do it, you know. And you're probably the same way. We concoct these scenarios in our mind. And James says, get rid of it. Take off that malice jacket. Take off the I am right jacket and throw it aside. He says, it's so prevalent. Everybody does it. Everybody has that situation with your own. And so he's saying, in the midst of that argument, you all of a sudden decide you're going to be quick to listen and you're going to peel off that jacket of self-rightness because I know where it leads and it never leads to anything good because even if I win, the relationship loses. And James gives us an alternative. He says, take that thing off, and here's what I want you to put on. He says, and, oh my, does he have to insert that word? Humble, humbly. Anybody like humility? I like it in other people, but we don't really like it ourselves, and yet it is the key to being able to maintain relationships at a great level. So he says, humbly accept the word. I think the word that he wants us to have implanted into our brains and into our hearts is to be quick to listen and slow to speak and quick to listen and slow to anger. Implant that into your heart, he says, which can save you. I don't think he's talking about eternal salvation there. He's talking about and the word salvation can be used in lots of different ways. Saved just basically means to be made whole, and that takes place eternally when we accept Christ. But it also can mean that it may resurrect, it may save your marriage. If you're quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. It may save you from going to prison if you're quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. It may save you from losing your job if you are quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Take that word and implant it into your heart, all right? That's what God's waiting for anything else. He says, humbly do that. It requires a humility. You know why? One thing that goes out the window, at least in my life, maybe not in yours, but I think it's in yours also. The thing that goes out of my life when I put on the coat of self-righteousness, humility just goes out the window. And I'm not able to listen to or understand what else anybody else is saying because I want to be right. Isn't that correct? You're there also. And you may not get that passionate about it, but God's pretty passionate about it. And he ends up with saying this, it has the power to save you in your life. And the key word is to accept that. Step back and what you have known from day one as being a follower of Jesus. The number one command, Jesus said it over and over again, if you're going to be my follower, the number one command is to love the Lord your God. How? With all my heart, with all my soul, with all my strength. And the second is likened to the first, and that is to love my husband, wife, son, daughter, boss, as myself. Love them as myself. That has power to make you whole. That has power, listen to me, to make a difference. Now, I know that some of you are saying here this morning going, boy, the other 3 sermons have been kind of fun. They've been good. I really don't like this sermon. This wasn't for me this morning. Yes, it is. It's for you and your big fat mouth. So, one thing your big fat mouth needs to learn is to be quick to what? Slow to speak. Quick and slow to anger. And have that implanted within our lives, and it can save a lot of relationships. Now,